guests, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a very, very special day and great day for us. Firstly, because a great scientist I come to assist. That is Prof CNR Rao. I don't dare to come and introduce him to you. I will. And why this is a very special occasion is the 25th lecture of our popular science series, where we had so far you have been hearing many brilliant talks. So being a 25th lecture, we thought we should have a really eminent person. And we could not have thought of anybody in India who is taller than Prof CNR Rao. And it has been so nice of Professor Balakrishnan. He is to agree to come and moderate the function. As customary, the moderator is supposed to introduce Professor CNR Rao, which who does not need an introduction. And I am supposed to introduce the moderator. Before I start, can I ask Dr. Srinivasan to welcome Professor CNR Rao to the flowers. Can I request Dr. Athre to welcome Professor Balakrishnan to the flowers, please? Professor N. Balakrishnan does not need any introduction. That too, the Institute of Science gathered. You all know he is alumnus of the Institute of Science. And probably we were contemporaries, right? We studied together, we shared a lot of good moments those days. And from the student, he has rose to the position of Associate Director. And for all of us, he is a dear Balki. We don't call him Professor Balakrishnan. He looks very odd for us. And I'm sure that most of the senior guys will call him Balki, not a Professor Balakrishnan. Then we find somebody different. And in tune to occupying such a great post, he has been awarded he has been bestowed with many awards. I am not going to read any one of that, because he said, don't introduce me like that. And he is one amongst us, and I request you to take over.
Prof CNR Rao, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. That too, sitting next to Prof CNR Rao, who is the doyen of Indian science. And I've said in many forums about how great he is. They've given me a biodata of his to read. I'm not going to read that, because introducing Prof CNR Rao to any crowd in the scientific arena would be like selling ice to an Eskimo. I'm not going to try that. But certainly, there are certain ways by which I should convey the gratitude of this great institute to a great man, the visionary son of India. I have said this in many forums, but there are several very young people here. They must know the invisible contributions or visible contributions in a silent way that Prof CNR Rao made to our life. The first and the foremost, when you walk into this institute, you would find a great, amazing level of greenery. Everyone who comes to this institute admires the great greenery here. And in fact, I've been a student here even before Prof CNR Rao became the director of the institute. One act of his changed the entire greenery of this institute. Many of you may not know. He just forbade any cattle to be raised in the Indian Institute of Science, because many of the people in this campus used to have cattle, because there were about 300 or 400 families living inside. 100 families were supplying milk to the other 200 families who had cattle. The cattle were grazing all over the place, and then because the undergrowth was actually being sampled by them, he did that, and then within a year or two, I think the campus changed its complete look. Then he created what you now call as the Jubilee Park. I think, and he planted more trees than, many other people I know in the history of human race. So with that, I think you found, and also he made a rule. You can suspend a professor in the institute, but you cannot cut a tree. And because of that, I think, we became an extremely green campus. The second thing which I would be ever grateful to him is the fact that he made a way of describing what is a golden age very simple. Many of you might have been students of history in the school. If you say so-and-so's Akbar's period is golden, why? Or so-and-so, the king's period is golden period, why? The answer is very straightforward. The thing is, he fostered many scout scholars, he built many rest houses, he created lots of opportunities for artists to grow and so on. In fact, Prof CNR Rao did exactly that. Many of us who have been here will know, when we came to this institute, until he became the director of the institute, there were only 2 lecture halls, or 3 lecture halls that you can think of. There was one called the Library Seminar Hall, which cannot hold more than about 50 people. And it was Library Seminar Hall. There was one L1AM and PE 301. I think those are the only 3 lecture halls into which even a Nobel laureate or anyone can come. These are classrooms actually. So they were the things. And first thing that Prof CNR Rao did was actually built many, many lecture hall complexes, including Satish Dhawan Auditorium and the Jain Tata Auditorium and many of them. In fact, the kind of things that did to this institute increased the scientific temper. Several people came looking at the world-class facilities that he created. Then the next thing was there was only one guest house that had only about 9 rooms and about another 6 rooms behind. We didn't know whether they existed or not because they were never allotted. So that was the main guest house. He said this is not the way by which a huge academic institution should run. So he built guest houses here, and then we were actually bestowed after that with some of the finest. I mean, if you look at it, the first lecture hall complex which was created in a department was in SSC. And now every department has followed that example. If you go into SCRC or biological sciences or any of them, they have a pride lecture hall complex, which is actually the one that was shown the way by Prof CNR Rao. And then if you look at the way by which we were doing science at a very small level. We're thinking about 2 lakhs projects, 3 lakhs projects, and 5 lakhs projects and so on. He's a man with a huge heart and a big heart. He taught us how to think big, how to dream. And all of that made this institute come to the top. Without any doubts, people were asking questions before it came. Is the Indian Institute of Science bigger than that? Or is it better than TFR? Is it better than NCL? And better than this and so on? So he put all of those questions to rest. If you don't believe me, I think look at the record which started after Prof CNR Rao took over. In fact, the number of people who became fellows of the academy during Prof CNR Rao's time, and the tempo continued, is humongous. In fact, all of us owe our existence to Prof CNR Rao. And today, just not me, and not people like me, but many others, if the scientists could stand up in this country and get counted, it's only because of people like CNR Rao. In fact, if we had been, without Prof CNR Rao for about maybe, in the scientific arena, no one would have bothered about us. Our voice would not have been heard. Because there was one man who was telling us that this is the way by which, the scientists must be heard. This is the way by which scientists have been contributing. This is the way by which they must be fostered. To give you an idea, the first man to ever understand the distinction between a non-planned funding and a planned funding, and to teach me that, is Prof CNR Rao. He realized that non-planned funding is very difficult to increase. You may not know what is the non-planned funding. All that I can tell you is when Balram took over as he told me that until Balki told me, I thought non-plan is something that you don't plan. So that's not the way by which one looks at it. Then he realized the scientists require funding in a huge way. So what he did was, when he was not even the director of the institute, I think even before that, when he was the chairman of some of the committees in UGC, he brought the Center of Excellence and Center of Advanced Studies and so on, so that under a plan they could be funded heavily. The supercomputer center, which you see today, is history. In fact, no institution could have, this is in 1990, no institution could have even thought of a project of 51 crores. Now my younger colleagues talk about several crores, but in those days, a person who puts up a project for 10 lakhs is a very big man. And then he's the one who started making us think very big. Not to dream small, big thinking and big delivery. That's the most important thing. And if one man I could actually put a finger on and say is responsible for the growth of this institute and also the science in this country, it's Prof CNR Rao. And I could actually go on and give a lecture for about 2 hours on what great things that he has done, but I'm not going to do that because I'm sure on a Saturday afternoon to see a hall full, I'm sure that they're not clapping for me. I think they're clapping for him. So I will make sure that I leave the floor to him. But I want to add, there is no one on earth I could think of coming to deliver a talk on a topic, celebration of science. The man who made us all become worthy of celebrating science, Prof CNR Rao.
My dear friends, with all these words of exaggeration, let me come to ground level. I'm most grateful to the Alumni Association for asking me to give a talk. Anything to do with the Institute, I give first priority. I hope you all know that. If you don't, let me remind you. To me, although I work in a large number of institutions in the world, even now I work in many places in the world, no institution gets priority over Indians for science. These are the few places where my heart and head both really contributed in some way and I belong here. And anything bad that is talked about in the institute even today, anywhere, I do not tolerate it. Even if it is, this peculiar affection and whatever, respect both for our institute here, is shared by some old timers who are here. That's why I'm telling you, the old alumni of the institute have contributed much to the traditions of the institute. And those who are young here, please don't forget, when you become senior citizens, that don't forget that this institute gave birth to you in some way, academically or otherwise. Having said that, let me give a talk. I modified a talk I gave to some talented children some time ago, about a year ago, about 10 months ago. I then realized what I was trying to tell them that day is actually something everybody should know. Because we just passed through a year, 2011, which is probably the greatest year in the history of science. And I think everyone should know about it, particularly those of us who are interested in science in some way. So I thought I would talk about that and say something about science itself. Why is 2011 so important? Of course, everybody said it's because it's the International Year of Chemistry. No, that is one of the lesser reasons. The major reason, according to me, is this picture. The man in the center is Lord Rutherford. Lord Rutherford, and next to him is Cockcroft and Walton, who built the Van de Graaff, first Van de Graaff machine. Of course, those two got a Nobel Prize. Before that, of course, Rutherford got a Nobel Prize as well. Because in 2011, the most important thing on earth in science happened, namely the structure of the atom. In fact, as Feynman long ago said, there is no other truth and no other discovery in science that can equal this one discovery, that everything in the world is made of atoms, and the structure of the atom being what it is, electrons and neutrons, nucleus. That fundamental discovery was in 1911, exactly 100 years ago. So, unfortunately, nobody made a point of it, for some reason which I do not know, but that is Rutherford. And even today, when you think of an atom, you think of the Rutherford atom. Before Rutherford gave the structure of the atom with a nucleus in the center and electrons around it, the structure was different. Don't forget, his own teacher, J.J. Thomson, said it is the electrons in the center, nucleus going around. So it's a nuclear atom of Rutherford that stays. There are many mistakes in it. It's not a perfect picture. Even then, when people think of an atom, they always think of Rutherford atom. And that is Rutherford. When we proposed the structure of the atom, we already had a Nobel Prize in 1911. 1908. He was awarded the prize for his investigation and the disintegration of elements and the chemistry of radioactive substances. So this is very interesting. Rutherford always talked very funnily about chemists. He always said, chemists, oh, they just collect stamps, he would say. But you know, as luck would have it, he got a Nobel Prize in chemistry, but not in physics. So it's okay. Rutherford was such a great man. Because again, you know, it's amazing in life. As you grow old, or older, you always worry about this amazing coincidences. He came to Cambridge just before the 20th century started, the end of the 19th century. And then he was the first student to be admitted to Cambridge University from outside Cambridge. You know, there was a rule in Cambridge that only those who are graduates of Cambridge can do research there. And it's only for the first time, you know, they were admitted a foreign student, and he was the first student. So that period, the rule didn't exist. He wouldn't have gone to Cambridge. He wouldn't have met J.J. Thomson, who had just then discovered the electron. In fact, Rutherford was there, the electron was discovered in 1897 by J.J. Thomson. Of course, then he discovered many more things. And you know, within a few years he got a Nobel Prize. You see, 1908 he had a Nobel Prize. 1911 he gave the structural atom. It's a very important thing that he did at that time. What is amazing is, after these major discoveries, he stopped doing research himself. He only allowed his students to do that. Almost every student of his got a Nobel Prize. You know, Chadwick got for neutrons, Carter and Walton, a number of Blackett got for positrons, and so on and so forth. And this is nice to remember how 100 years ago we understood this structural atom. Another major thing happened exactly 100 years ago. This is Camerling Owens in front of his liquid helium plant. He built one of the first liquid helium liquefiers. And in 1911, this is the picture of Camerling Owens. Camerling Owens, in this picture, he is with his guru was van der Waals. You all know van der Waals, diffraction. And he did his PhD at van der Waals. And in 1911, for the first time, he discovered superconductivity. In fact, this is the graph that shows how mercury becomes superconducting at 4.2 Kelvin, and this is historical. This is exactly 100 years old. And that's why I thought everybody should know why 2011 is so important, because we are celebrating the centenary of some major things. Most important of all is this picture. What is this picture? Well, what happened in exactly 1911 was they decided to have the first conference of the intellectuals of science. It was called the Solvay conference. The first Solvay conference was in 1911, exactly 100 years ago. There is another reason, 2011, we celebrated the centenary of the first Solvay conference. I'll mention that later. And this is a famous photograph. You see, there is Madame Curie, there is Lorentz, there is Rutherford, Planck, there is Einstein, you see. Einstein is standing there, is not important. Because you know why? In 1911, he still had not become that famous. So he's still standing there in the corner. And this is it. In fact, when I was teaching in IIT Kanpur, I used to give this picture to my tutorial student. Identify every photograph. Because even today I can tell you, most professors do not identify all the names. So I got great. But it's a very important picture, because it is this meeting, 1911 meeting, that changed the nature of science. All of physical science, including therefore indirectly engineering, what is the meaning of electron, atom, how do you describe that? Read for quantum mechanics, the classical world, transformed to the quantum mechanical world, all that happened in that meeting. There was a very famous meeting. In fact, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of that a few months ago in Belgium. This is the second most famous conference, 5th Solvay conference, and now you see Einstein is sitting there. And those who cannot see, there is Madame Curie, much older person now, and there is Niels Bohr, my God, all the great names. And behind him, you know, is Heisenberg. I hope you can see Heisenberg. You find out, get a picture of who is Heisenberg. It will take time for me to read out all the names. Heisenberg, I hope you know this story, went at the age of 21 as a research assistant. You know, in our institute we give what is known as project assistant. He was one of those project assistants under Niels Bohr. He went to Denmark. And as usual, our professors in the institute, very rarely you can find them here. And they're always going around. And as Niels Bohr also used to go and travel a lot. And he went away sometime, about 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks holiday. And when he came back, Heisenberg says, Professor Bohr, in your absence, I made a very major discovery. He said, so what is it? He said, well, you know, it's something called the uncertain fleet. Turn off that phone, please hear me. I have made this discovery of the uncertainty principle. And let me see what you have done. He said, you know, I have already sent it for publication. And Niels Bohr, you know what? He said, my God, even he's my assistant, right? And he said, you know, I thought it was too important to wait for it. Heisenberg got a Nobel Prize for it a few years later. There are unbelievable stories in science. The reason I am celebrating the science is these stories will not occur again. Only in that 1911-1920 period. After that, science will never have such a period again, the golden age of science, and we are now talking about the golden age of science. Now, I'm repeating that 1911 picture again with Einstein standing there, and Rutherford and Madame Curie. That this is the 100th anniversary we had. I don't know, even though I was a chemist, I was one of the speakers in the 100th anniversary of the Solvay conference in Belgium. The king came, it was really amazing. The Prime Minister welcomed us. The king came and sat in the front row here, and after 2 hours he just walked out. Nobody went with him. It was amazing. And here, you know, if even an ordinary second-rate minister comes, the entire audience will go with him. I'm very fortunate today there is no minister. Okay. This is the story of it. And 1911 also is very well known for Madame Curie's second Nobel Prize. You all know she got her first Nobel Prize in 1903. 1911 she got the second Nobel Prize, and this prize for radioactivity. And what I want to tell you is how history has not changed much. It keeps repeating itself. You know, just because she was a woman, even though she had 2 Nobel Prizes, they would not give her any benefit in France, because all the French newspapers used to write very dirty stories about her, very bad stories about her personal life. For example, the Excelsior magazine had a spear campaign against her. With 2 Nobel Prizes, the French Academy did not elect her as a member of the Academy. It's amazing. She is the only person known in history with 2 Nobel Prizes not being a member of the Academy of that country in France. Well, I know I have been a member of the French Academy for many years now. Things are different today, but it was terrible now then, those days, that someone like Madame Curie with 2 Nobel Prizes not being allowed to enter the Academy. But anyway, this is Madame Curie, and 1911 she got the second Nobel Prize. What is more interesting, more exciting for many of you here in the audience is that just toward the end of 1911, 1912, there was another 21, 22-year-old boy walking in the backs of, I hope you all know what I mean by backs, along the river in Cambridge behind the colleges, and that was William Bragg. The young boy suddenly thought of the idea of X-ray diffraction and crystallography. Well, diffraction was known. His father himself had done some work on that. What people must see, if many of you have not read, you must see his 1912 paper in Nature, where he shows how X-ray diffraction pattern gives the structure of the crystal. Beautiful paper, single author paper in Nature, 1912. That is William Bragg, a 22-year-old person who did that. Later he shared the Nobel Prize with his father. I think he was very kind to his father. He could have got it just for himself, as I see that. But his father had made a little discovery. His father always said, you know, real ideas are all my sons, not mine. But anyway, they shared it, which is a good thing, nice thing, historically. But this young man, what he did in 1912, I think has resulted in more research and more clever than any other single discovery in physical sciences, because I don't know how many Nobel Prizes have been given in crystallography for doing boron compounds or insulin, all kinds of biological systems. That all started with that paper, this young man. Well, coming back to 1911 again, Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to Madame Curie. That's why 1911 to 2011 they called it the International Year of Chemistry. So I hope you don't mind a few minutes of chemistry for you, because chemistry itself has very interesting history. at 1 century, 1911 to 2011, what happened in science and in chemistry is unbelievable. Even in 19th century, we had already ideas of periodic table. Urea, the first compound, was discovered in 19th century, 1828. Faraday made lots of discoveries in the 19th century. However, in the early 20th century, X-rays had been discovered, radioactivity was discovered, noble gases were discovered, atomic structure came. But what is amazing, 1916 was the first idea of a chemical bond. What we call compounds and as bonds, as if everybody knows about chemical bonds today. But it is only in 1916 the first paper came. It's unbelievable. The history is very recent. Of course, X-ray diffraction, I told you, after 1911, 1912, and so on. And you see, in century, how much science and chemistry has come out. So those who ask, what is science done, what is so great about the science and what it does to anybody, you can say, look, go back 100 years and see where we were. Come look at today where we are, and you can see progress. Okay, coming to chemistry, the history of chemistry briefly is like this. In the 18th century, there was no subject called chemistry. In fact, nobody defined what chemistry was. It was generally part of some sort of a natural philosophy. And the first person who defined sort of chemistry was Lavoisier in 18th century. He died in 1794 in under tragic circumstances. We call him the father of chemistry because he was the one who gave the concept of conservation of mass. Very, very important. The whole science is no conservation of mass. The life would be terrible. And he is the first one to define what chemical composition meant. He was the one who showed air, it was oxygen and nitrogen. He showed what combustion was. But unfortunately, his friends were very rich, wealthy people, noblemen, and king and queen and so on. And 1794 was the peak of the French Revolution. I hope you will know that. French Revolution, Mary Antoinette and her husband were guillotined. And exactly what happened to Lavoisier, the great head of Lavoisier, he was guillotined because he was too king. He was one of the greatest minds of chemistry, and that's what happened. For those who are interested in history, I hope you all know 1797. You are in Bangalore, so you should know this history. Not too far from here in Srinagar, our Tipu Sultan almost picked up the British at that time, the third battle of Tipu Sultan, Mysore, and he failed, unfortunately. We had one against the British in 2 battles. It is that period we are talking about. Here was Tipu Sultan fighting the British, there the French Revolution, and it was around at the same time that Lavoisier was guillotined. The second big name, everyone knows Dalton because he was the first one to talk about atoms, and everyone knows Dalton's atoms. And then the big name, every time I have an opportunity, I spend 5 minutes on Faraday because I don't want people to not to know about it. Unfortunately, people do not know the importance of Faraday or how great he was. For those who are young, let me tell you, my estimate is the following. If I were asked to pick only one name in science, all science put together, the greatest science of all time, I would pick Faraday. Nobody else. It's experimental science. Everyone would say, oh, but Einstein, I'm not going to mix up theory and experiment. But I would say, even if you mix it up, no one could make as many discoveries in one life as Michael Faraday. He wrote 451 papers, figure out. No DST grants, no drafting, nothing, single-handed. And beautiful handwriting too. And you can see his record book. Every day he would write a record book. You know, I have seen, for hours I have spent looking at the record books. In 1833, December 24th, he did some experimental electrolysis. 1833, December 26th, he had done some catalysis, some experiment he did. 25th December is only missing because that was Christmas Day. One day. Every day he used to do experiments. And then, very wonderful life. The number of things he did at that time, if you evaluate it today, and Rutherford said, if only in the 20th century, he would have got at least 5 Nobel Prizes. That's what he said. That's about right. 4 or 5 he would have got if you were in 20th century. The number of things he did enormous. I'm not going to list everything. Loss of electrolysis, liquefaction of gases, number of things. Discovery of benzene. He's the one who gave the idea of diamagnetism, paramagnetism, all those words were created by him. He discovered electricity, of course, by induction, that you know. But his story is very interesting for many other when we teach electrolysis, somehow we bring in electrons. There's no need for electron. When he discovered electrolysis, electron had not been discovered. This is what is amazing. 1897 electrons were discovered. He had done that research in 1840, so no electrons were there. So it's amazing how we could imagine certain things. The same is true of Arrhenius electronic dissociation. There were no electrons had not yet been discovered when he did that. So it is amazing that we have people with such imagination. Because when he did electricity, or one of the famous experiments, he would put what is static electricity? He would make this huge cage and charge it up and sit inside the cage. So you see, nothing happens. Static electricity is different, and he would show all these demonstrations. Because when he discovered electricity, the finance minister at that time, and the chancellor of the exchequer, you know this famous story, he goes to Faraday. What is the use of your discovery? He said, Mr. Minister, someday you will tax it, he told him. the reason I admire Faraday is not only because of that. There's a very famous letter written to Faraday by the Royal Society at that time. Royal Society said, dear Mr. Faraday, we would very much like you to consider the possibility that you would become the president of the Royal Society. We would like you to become. He wrote back after 2 days, thank you for the honor that you think I am worthy of such a great position as the presidency of the Royal Society, but I am afraid my place is in the laboratory. Thank you very much. You did like that. I think there is a lesson for those of us in life like that. How many people are like that? Simple man, very simple life, very God-fearing, and went on discovering one thing after the other, 450 papers single-handed. If at all I'm inspired by anybody in science, I would say the most inspiration source has always been Michael Faraday, at least in my life. And I show this crazy Russian just to show how unlucky one can be. He died in 1907. He was the first one to think of periodic table. That is such a powerful table, such a powerful idea. He should have had the Nobel Prize. But 1906, the Nobel Prize started in 1901. I hope you all know that. 1906, the French Masson was discovering fluorine. He died the following year. See, but there is one of the lessons to younger people. If any one of you wants to get a Nobel Prize, young fellows here, first of all, New York. You must also do some research. Okay. Chemistry is an old subject. One way of looking at the elements, in the first century we only knew 7 elements. So it's only in 20th century we know 114 elements. During the time of Lavoisier, we knew 23 elements. I must correct that. I don't know why 20 is 23. But I've shown my guru, my great teacher in a way, Glenn Seaborg from Berkeley. He made most of the artificial elements, particularly plutonium, don't forget. Don't ask me what is plutonium, what is it used for. I hope you know that. So, Seaborg made many of these elements. So 20th century is where I think chemistry belongs, because chemical bonds got to be known in 1916, most elements got to be known in 20th century, and this is the famous periodic table. And a few months ago I had to give a lecture in a very major play, whatever it is in Sweden. When I gave the lecture, I showed this table and said, this is the greatest table man has made. No other table is as powerful as a periodic table. Everything that you want to know about elements, about the indirectly about matter and so on. And this is the great periodic table of today, originated from the ideas of Mendeleev, the crazy Russian scientist who was ignored for some reason. Well, chemists make compounds, I will not talk about it. What to remember is that the first compound was made in 1828, urea, and of course since then a number of compounds have been made. This is the first man who made a compound, Goder, in Germany, 1828. Since then, a number of people like Woodward, many others have contributed. And I'll quickly go through the next thing. When did modern chemistry start? You see, people should know that, because this is a very fundamental thing for all sciences, even engineering. When we learn to put 2 electrons between atoms and say it's a bond, then modern chemistry started. That happened in 1916 with the great ideas of G. N. Lewis. The first paper of chemical bond was by G. N. Lewis. He is the one, again, since I am talking in this institute, it is very important for us to know about traditions. G.N. Lewis built the chemistry department at University of California, Berkeley. I was a postdoc there. When I went as a postdoc, by that time he had already died. G.N. Lewis built such a department. Even today, from 1947 to today to 2012, nobody can beat Berkeley Chemistry Department in its quality of research. That is the kind of tradition of a department. There are many such departments in the world, but nobody can beat this kind of a tradition, powerful chemistry department. Because I remember when I was a postdoc, before I joined the institute, anyway, for those who may not know, I joined the institute 53 years ago as a faculty member. When I came 53 years ago, this is a small, nice place here. It is not a big place like this institute now. But then, the Berkeley campus, I could feel the ghost of Lewis. He was such a powerful personality, had done so many things in science. And the number of things he did in science is very nice to recollect. Today I have no time. Today I'm not going to talk about him or his contribution. In fact, I give a 1-hour lecture on the man who did not get the prize. It's about G.N. Lewis. Every student has got a Nobel Prize. G.N. Lewis didn't get it. For reasons I do not know. The reason why they refused is something I have gone through, studied it, getting all the documents from the Nobel Committee now. Because 50 years afterwards, we get all the Nobel documents. When he was nominated 15 times and 12 times for the idea of the chemical bond, the answer, Nobel Committee said, well, we do not know whether chemical bond is such an important concept in chemistry. They told me that. When Lewis asked this and Lewis basis when he did, well, I don't know whether chemists will accept that. Everything, every amazingly number of things he did, the number of times he has turned out 23 times. 24 times. He's a great man. To me, 20th century chemistry, but 19th century Faraday was, 20th century I would say the greatest chemist of 20th century was G.N. Lewis. Nobody has come out with number of ideas, original ideas, as he did. Of course, the idea of the chemical bond was taken further by Linus Pauling, a young Linus Pauling, about 26 years old in this picture. When he started working this with his wife, he joined Caltech as an assistant professor. He shaped the idea of a chemical bond. And he dedicated his book, The Nature of the Chemical Bond, that he wrote to G.N. Lewis. And I owe myself to that book. But for that book, probably I wouldn't have been a chemist. But when I thought I should become a chemist, it was in 1951, long ago, 61 years ago. And that book of Linus Pauling, which is the chemical bond, was revolutionized modern chemistry. And chemistry of the bond changed everything. People start worrying about molecular structure, reaction mechanism, went on doing all kinds of spectroscopies, diffraction, and so on. And then, around 1951, again when I was doing my MSc degree, a major thing happened. Linus Pauling saw the first section of protein. And that was very important because that is where the bulk of molecular biology is. Today's lecture show connections. I start with physics, I start then chemistry. Now you see, the so-called molecular biology, which is now on its own, beginning can be traced to discovery of the alpha helix by Linus Pauling, 1951. And at that time, in 1954, Linus Pauling was given a Nobel Prize for the idea of chemical bond, not for protein, he was given for chemical bond. But G.N. Lewis by that time had died. This is the Linus Pauling in 1954 when he got the Nobel Prize. He was expected to come to India in 1954, to Hyderabad, where Indian Science Congress. Then, just before I went to America, then I went all the way, those unreserved third-class compartments those days, to Hyderabad. Then they said, Pauling is not coming. The reason was Americans had withdrawn his passport for 3-4 years. Had branded him a communist and all that those days. All he did was don't do nuclear testing in open air. Today everybody understands that. Then it was considered a terrible thing to say about nuclear testing. Anyway, Linus Pauling, 1954, didn't come here, because I met him a year later in the US. That's a different story, I will not talk about that. Chemistry then got to be known as involving three things like structure, synthesis, dynamics. Then a famous book came called Opportunities in Chemistry in 1985, describing chemistry. And then this is the change that took place in late 70s, just right when I was in the institute, my second time in the institute as a faculty member. Molecular molecular biology and chemistry interacted in a big way. Advanced materials started interacting with chemistry. There were lots of new discoveries like high-temperature superconductivity, all new kinds of fullerenes were discovered, and new, other than molecular chemistry, supramolecular chemistry, or where bonding, weak bonds determine the shape, structures of large molecules, and so on. The superconductivity I want to show, because this is March 1987, in the December 1986, high-temperature superconductivity was discovered. It was at 35 Kelvin, which was still liquid helium temperature. People wanted to do a liquid nitrogen temperature superconductor. All over the world there was a lot of interest. Bell Labs in America, and also the people in Texas, Chu, and in China, in Beijing, and we in the institute. That's why I've shown this here, independently made. When we made it, we knew the structure and the composition as 1, 2, 3 by B and 2, 3, 3, 0, 7. This was March 1937. That was published in Nature from us as in the institute. Now this changed chemistry. The reason is, if you see the recent report of the US National Academy of Sciences, it says the role of chemistry in advanced material science changed after the discovery of superconductivity, because all the superconductors were nothing but chemicals. Chemists had to make all these things, and chemistry, physics, material science all started merging together around the 80s in a big way. Then came fullerene, again discovered new forms of carbon, nanotubes were discovered, and so on. So a few minutes ago, the reason I'm saying how science keeps changing. The same National Academy of Science has published in 2003 a new version of what chemistry is. They say it no longer talks of molecules, but beyond the molecule, beyond what you call it, beyond the molecular frontier. They talk about living systems, therapies, new synthesis of new complex chemistry, chemistry of the earth, sea, and the atmosphere. These are the things they talk about as important chemistry. Materials by design, and then chemical theory and computation. See, computation today, as I have seen, I was using the first computer that came on earth. The first computer came around 51, 52. I was doing a PhD thesis in 53, 54 when I went to US. I was probably only 2 of us in the entire chemistry department in the US were using computer. Everybody was, how you were using computer? It was unbelievable. And the huge computer which occupied the room, today I guess it's the size of my hand, a palm or something. It was unbelievable. And today, then you know what, whenever we did experiments, we would say, well, you know, theory agrees with the experiment, you would say. What that means is the experiment was true, and theory gave you 20 as the answer, we said agreement was not bad. Today is the other way around. In fact, theory is so good, computation is so good, we check the experiment whether it's good enough, because they can calculate much better than we could measure in some areas. It's very unbelievable, the advances in computation. That's what I've told you is how science has changed. 1911, the entire world saw a new science coming in. Atoms came, quantum mechanics came, X-ray diffraction came, number of things happened, subjects changed, chemistry came, chemistry gave birth to biology, and biology, chemistry start combining, material science and chemistry start combining. Like with other subjects can also give similar lecture where the evolution of their subject domain has happened. But however, today, what has happened in science? 5 minutes on that. Doesn't matter which subject you are in, whether you are electrical engineer, physicist, chemist, biologist, whatever you do in your lab is your business. That is not what I am questioning. What is the problem that is really bothering humanity? Only this energy and environment, no other problem. Actually, more and more you see the figures, more and more frightened you get about the future of mankind. I just got the latest database published by the American Academy of Sciences and Energy. I don't know whether it's in that. Very frightening, because how come man is unable to answer when somebody is telling you there is an emergency, you think you respond. If that's what someone is saying. It's like the Alvin's Toffler's future shock. Alvin Toffler's future shock, I don't know if you remember in his book, he says, it is the rate of change of acceleration that people cannot get used to. It is not acceleration. Acceleration itself you can't get used to. The rate of change of acceleration is a dA by d, that is an unbelievable slope that is. And it's very difficult to get used to. And just like that, man is unable emergency and the warnings of calamity, it looks like. There's one very beautiful article I just read a couple of days ago. If you look at energy, what is it we are going to do with energy? In fact, I only spent 5 minutes on that. The reason is in a meeting like that, we talk of science, we don't talk about the most pressing problem. I think I will have failed in my view, so I thought I would say that. Somebody wrote in our Prime Minister's speech, I don't know, I don't know who made this, some terrible mistake, and he read it out, of course. He said India requires, he said, 800,000 megawatts of energy, electrical energy. So I don't know who wrote 800. It's impossible. Imagine that figure being ever made in India, or anywhere in the world for that matter. Actually, somebody must have written 300,000. 3 becomes 8 very easily. And somebody has transformed 3 into 8. And anyway, if it is 300,000 megawatts, most people agree is a reasonable estimate for India in about 20-30 years. How do we get that? People, nuclear, yeah, sure, nuclear, I know atomic energy very well, and I don't see any way. We never made that thing. You know, there is not enough uranium in the entire world to make that thing. Okay? I want to know that. People say, oh, make 100,000 megawatts. No, there is no uranium. You buy all the uranium, you won't have that much uranium to make. We have to find completely new ways. Photovoltaic, we have 2 points, but not for the grid system, localized supply, but even that will increase. I agree, we may need 5,000 megawatts of photovoltaic, but we are not even 100 megawatts probably now. But so this is the problem. So this is where I put chemical approaches. I call it chemistry, but don't have to call it physics or material science. Hydrogen is very important. Solar, fuel cell, batteries, all of it. To me, something that's very important is artificial photosynthesis. Imitate the plant and get hydrogen. Plants, I hope you all know, you remember what plants do is take water vapor, and in a particular active site in the leaf, water is broken up into hydrogen and oxygen. And the center that breaks up water into hydrogen and oxygen is a manganese oxygen cube. The structure has been solved very nicely by Barber in London. You take that oxygen and you bring that oxygen that plants give, and the hydrogen, of course, the plant uses to make sugar or food or whatever. But if you don't do that artificially, you somehow decompose water using some other way, in photosynthesis, and use that hydrogen. That may be one of the cheapest ways of making it. Hydrogen energy, I think, is going to be one of the major things. Unfortunately, India is not interesting enough. For those, as I am talking, 6 months ago, American government, the President of the United States, Steve Chu, to be exact, the man who is in charge of the Department of Energy, gave one research grant for $120 million for this. Only 2 people, $120 million. The biggest grant ever given in the history of mankind for one project to making hydrogen. They're using some nanotechnology. I will not bother you what it is, and otherwise I will give another seminar on it. But so we must be working on something like that. Completely new ways. Other than I listed everything, you will improve the battery, you will improve fuels, everything. If your fuel cell, where is the hydrogen for it? You need hydrogen. You need some fuel. And then how to store hydrogen is another problem. That is not been solved. It's a very burning problem. We don't know where to store hydrogen. People work on all kinds of alloys. Alloys are out there. There is no way anybody will ever use metals and alloys for storing hydrogen. That is all. That's a very light material. Something like carbon. Next to carbon is boron and nitrogen. Maybe carbon, boron, nitrogen, something like that. Some light material to store hydrogen. That's why a lot of chemists are working on this as well. But I don't know what the future of storage is. What is to me is amazing is this. H2O was quite fluid oxygen. We need that hydrogen. And this is a write-up by Jules Verne in 1874. I'm going to read that in The Mysterious Island. And what will they burn instead of coal? Asked Pencroft. Water, replied Harding. But water decomposed into primitive elements. Yes, my friends, I believe that water will one day be employed as fuel. That hydrogen and oxygen, which constitute it, will furnish an inexhaustible source of heat and light. Water will be the coal of the future. In 1874, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I am convinced this is the only source that we have for energy. Of course, I'm not downgrading nuclear at all. Everything we will need. If you want to run on the cars, airplanes, hydrogen. That's true. no pollution. That's why environment comes in. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was with Ratan Tata at a meeting. I was just joking around about something. As you know, one of my very close friends in MIT, I've been to MIT a few months ago to give some name lectures there, after the lectures. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and who is being supported by Ratan Tata for his research about this hydrogen. And I asked him, how come you are giving $15 million to a person in MIT? You should be supporting some Indians, just in some Indians and so on. Of course, there is nothing against that. What he said was, why am I doing that? He said, my ultimate dream would be to run all cars on water. And that's the only way we'll solve the energy problem. That's how the automobiles are concerned, or aeroplanes are concerned. And this is not a joke. In fact, it is a serious matter. And I think we should seriously think about it in Indian society, particularly people should work on hydrogen and related problems. But all others being important, they have not solved many other, like, what is the only one that will solve the environment and energy problem at the same time? Any other way would be not so easy. So, something else. Chemistry, as I've already talked about. And then I would like to close my lecture making a few comments about science. This is something purely personal, and I hope those who do not agree with me will not mind what I say. And those who agree with me, please believe me, I'm being absolutely sincere. At my age, I'm approaching 80, I don't have to lie. I never lied in my life, for those who do not know. That has been my problem, not lying. But about science, why is it you are doing science? And this question, what did you say? Science is something you do every day. It's not something you do for 5 days a week or holiday, you take off and so on. Because if you are really a scientist, you are worrying about it all the time. You are sleeping, you are finding sentences, what will be the first paragraph of some paper, etc., etc., etc. You worry a lot about what you are doing. That is obvious. Other thing about science is, it is the only profession I know, in addition to teaching, science and teaching, you have to put together, that makes you gives you a position where you can be completely selfless. When you're really giving a good lecture to students, I don't think you're thinking about yourself. You're somehow teaching some group of people who you hope will become something later. Same thing with science. Science is not done for any particular ulterior motive. Of course, it is nice to have objectives like hydrogen energy or whatever. Forgetting that, we do science mainly because it's so exciting to do, so absorbing to do, so demanding to do, and also a great companion. Of course, I gave the story I'm going to mention next, something I'm going to mention now in a lecture to young students a couple of years ago or a year ago. I always remember Rabindranath Tagore, because this is the 150th anniversary. In fact, if you have read Gitanjali, or if you have not read it, please do so. There are many things in Gitanjali which makes you really think about things. The beautiful, beautiful set of poems. And in Gitanjali, one of the poems, Rabindranath Tagore says that, you know, what is it that wherever I go, this shadow follows me, the shadow called self. Why can't I get rid of that shadow, that self? And I don't want that self behind me. That's absolutely true. It is the selfishness of man that has destroyed the world, as Gandhiji said, many other great people have said. And there's one of the few professions, at least to me, is doing science. When you're working with young people, you want young people to do well, you work with them, it's a great pleasure to work with young people. I've enjoyed working with a few hundred people who have worked with me, of which at least 150 or 160 people have got PhDs with me. It's been a fantastic life. Really, I have had no time to worry about myself. In fact, I don't want to worry about myself. Why should you worry about the price of tomatoes? What the hell is that? What stupid thing to worry about? Let some idiot worry about it. You know, I think science is something, the worry should be at a different level. And also, it is not only that, it's something where it's very, not only ennobling, and something that keeps you in a different level. There is nothing wrong being an aristocrat in ideas, aristocrat in knowledge, aristocrat in the way you think. Science gives you an extraordinary position to be a different person. And I think science has done that to me, and I'm very grateful. And in that process, this institute has contributed much to my life. I did most of the science in this institute, almost 50 years. About 47 years, we guided students here. So, it's been a wonderful thing. You know, what is in the end, again, Rabindranath Tagore says, what is about life itself? He says, you know, when it's in the end about death, he says, you know, I have enjoyed life thoroughly. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy death too. It's really amazing. Just like that, quoting Tagore in the last part of Gita, you know, as you grow old, you know, you close the shop, you have done enough. You want to say, everything is over. But what you then think is, what a wonderful thing the world, how wonderful this world has been, and life has been. World and life have given me tremendously, there's no doubt, just like Tagore said. Unfortunately, I feel I've given so little to this world, so little to life. But life and world have given me enormous satisfaction. And that has been through science. Without science, I don't think it would have been the same life. Of course, the only other profession where it can be equal to science or as great as an experience would be in music. Only a great musician can reach a level, sublime level, where he can forget himself and compose new things, improvise the way he wants, and reach heights of a different level. And there are a few musicians I know who have done that. But in science it's the same thing. If you've been a small scientist like me, unknown to the world, I think we can do things which are beyond us. And that's the thing about science. Science demands commitment beyond your abilities. And how many of us are prepared to give energy and time beyond our ability? And those who do that get this benefit of the enjoyment, of happiness. And this has been a wonderful life. I've enjoyed doing science. And not only that, science in this institute. And I'm grateful for your patience.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we should, you youngsters must have seen that it came not from his heart, I think it came from the bones of Prof CNR Rao. He lived science, he breathed science. So I thought I must recall one more anecdote. When he said that Faraday refused the offer of becoming the president of the Royal Society. I also know another man who did something similar to that. At the time, Sir, bear me out, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister of this country. As the advisor to the Prime Minister, he made a presentation. In those days, it was not a presentation like with PowerPoint and all that. You will have to prepare with your transparency and pen and so on. He made the presentation, and then Rajiv Gandhi turns to the Minister of Science and Technology, says that, thanks to CNR Rao, and calls the Minister and says, you please discuss with Prof CNR Rao, and I agree with whatever he said, and we must move forward. Then he goes away. And then the scientist says, the minister told Prof CNR, so I may be not correct in exact words, he told him that you come and meet me tomorrow. Prof CNR told him, Mr. Minister, I am a working scientist. I don't have time to come and meet all of this. If you want to come and meet me, come to Bangalore and meet me. Is that correct? So, I have had the great opportunity of being very close to Prof CNR Rao, admiring him all my life and in the process growing. I think I have heard many of such anecdotes in his life where he had given up many things in his life just to pursue science. That is also because he was not only fortunate, he's a gift of God to us, great human being and a great brain and a fantastic person, but he's also blessed by God by giving him a great wife. Actually I remember her telling me on one of the occasions that as soon as they got married and they moved to IIT Kanpur, exactly like he never worried about the price of tomato, because there was somebody else who was worrying about the price of the wine. And then apparently when they got married, I mean, she was a little shorter, and then she couldn't actually open the window in the kitchen. And they needed to open the window. So I told him that, please open the window. He said, tomorrow I'll open the window. And then they lived there. He moved out to Kanpur, the window was never opened. And so the kind of things you need to tango, I think, they had a fantastic life together, and she was his greatest support, which I know it personally. And I thought I must keep the floor open for all of you to ask him questions. And because I know for one thing, only a burning candle can light another. And here is a burning star in front of us. I think we should benefit by this. I think I would like all the youngsters to ask questions. It does not mean old people cannot ask questions. Please go on.
Everybody get compared to me. Correct.
Yes, please.